Hey everyone, and welcome back to today's explainer for St. Paul American School Clark, Grade 9 Biology. Today we are tackling Unit 07, Lesson 03, Arthropod Characteristics and Arthropod Diversity. We are diving into a really fascinating exploration of Earth's absolute most successful biological life forms. Now, when you hear terms like advanced survival technology or specialized armor, you might instantly think of science fiction or some crazy alien world, right? But the truth is, the real rulers of the Earth have been using these incredible evolutionary innovations for hundreds of millions of years, quite literally right under our noses. I am super excited to guide you through this.
Okay, let's set up our roadmap for today. First, we'll cover arthropod characteristics, then arthropod diversity, followed that insects and their relatives. After that, we'll switch gears to echinoderm characteristics, move on to invertebrate chordates, and wrap it all up with a quick check and recap.
All right, starting right off with Section 7.26.1, Arthropod Characteristics, specifically focusing on their biological armor.
To really understand arthropods, we have to look at their physical traits as highly specialized survival gear. So, what are the core tech specs of an arthropod? Well, first off, they've got a segmented body, usually broken down into a head, a thorax, and an abdomen. Surrounding all of that is a rigid, hard exoskeleton made mostly out of proteins and a tough substance called chitin. This exoskeleton is basically a phenomenal suit of biological armor. It gives them immense structural support and strictly prevents water loss, allowing them to conquer dry land. But think about it. Having a completely stiff, rigid suit of armor creates a massive movement problem, right? The evolutionary workaround for this is absolutely genius. Jointed appendages. Imagine trying to walk around or even just climb a flight of stairs without ever bending your knees or your elbows. It'd be almost impossible. That's why those jointed appendages are so crucial. They give arthropods the flexibility they need to actually move and function inside that heavy-duty armor.
Now, there is a bit of a catch to having this incredible tough exterior. The exoskeleton itself doesn't grow as the animal grows. So to actually get bigger, the arthropod has to periodically go through a process called molting. They literally have to shed their old, tight armor and replace it with a brand new, larger suit that they grow into. It is a really vulnerable time for the animal for sure, but it's an absolutely necessary biological upgrade if they want to survive and grow. And the biological innovation isn't just on the outside. They've got some serious tech on the inside, too. Arthropods have developed highly advanced biological filtration and ventilation systems. For instance, they use structures called Malpighian tubules to process and carry waste from their digestive tract right out of the body. And when it comes to breathing, well, terrestrial arthropods had to figure out how to breathe air. So they evolved specialized respiratory structures like trachea or even book lungs to efficiently exchange gases with the atmosphere. These are highly specialized internal systems perfectly tailored for surviving and thriving on land.
Moving on to Section 7.26.2, Arthropod Diversity, or as I like to call it, the four factions. With survival tech this good, it makes sense that they are everywhere. In fact, arthropods make up roughly 80% of all known animal species on Earth today. That is a massive scale. So we can break this massive group down into four major subphyla. First up, we have the Myriapoda. Think centipedes. These are land dwellers that boast anywhere from 10 to a whopping 400 walking legs. Next are the Chelicerida, which includes spiders. They rock exactly 8 walking legs and completely lack antennae. Then we've got the Crustacea, like lobsters and crabs. They are mostly aquatic and feature 2 pairs of antennae. And finally, the Hexapoda subphylum. This is basically the insects, defined by having 6 walking legs and often sporting highly modified appendages, like wings. Let's dive a bit deeper into that last group in Section 7.26.3, insects and their relatives. We're going to look at a really cool worked example. The Hexapoda, meaning the insects, are without a doubt the undisputed rulers of the land. I mean, they alone account for over 2/3 of all named species on the entire planet. Their insane success is mostly due to their highly modular bodies, those 6 walking legs, and of course those modified appendages. Having wings literally unlocked the skies for them. Plus, a lot of them undergo metamorphosis, completely transforming their bodies during their life cycle, which is a massive survival advantage. But hey, crazy evolutionary tech isn't limited just to the insects. Let's look at an amazing worked example from their relatives over in the Chelicerida group, the spiders. Over in the ponds of northern Europe, there's this tiny brown spider that actually spends its entire life underwater. But here's the crazy part. Just like spiders on land, it physically needs oxygen from the air to breathe. So how on earth does an animal with terrestrial lungs survive its whole life completely submerged? This brilliantly illustrates just how adaptable these creatures are. The spider actually leaves its underwater web, swims up to the surface, and traps a tiny bubble of air against its abdomen. It then swims back down and deposits this bubble into a little silk air tank it has meticulously spun underwater. This structure, known as a diving bell, functions exactly like a physical gill. It continuously sucks dissolved oxygen straight out of the surrounding water and into the bubble, letting the spider hang out safely submerged for up to 24 hours at a time. I mean, it has literally evolved a biological scuba tank. How cool is that?
All right, let's completely shift gears now. Moving to sections 7.27 and 7.27.1, echinoderm characteristics. If arthropods are all about rigid armor and joints, echinoderms are all about spiny skin and some seriously bizarre biological hydraulics. Consider animals like the asterias, better known as the starfish, and the ophiura, or brittle star. Notice their body shape. As adults, they display what we call radial symmetry, which just means their bodies radiate outwards from a central axis, kind of like the spokes on a bicycle wheel. But what's super interesting is that during their larval stage, they are actually bilaterally symmetrical, meaning they have a distinct left and right side. They totally rewrite their own body plan as they mature into adults.
The underlying tech of an echinoderm is wildly different from an arthropod. Instead of an exoskeleton on the outside, they have an endoskeleton on the inside. Internal armor made of calcareous plates called ossicles. But their absolute coolest feature is their water vascular system. This is an intricate fluid-filled hydraulic network that they use to move around, capture their prey, and even breathe. They do have a complete digestive system, but here's a weird fact. They completely lack a specialized excretory system. It is just a completely different, but clearly highly effective approach to biological engineering.
Finally, let's transition to section 7.2, invertebrate chordates. Here, we are looking at the foundational biological tech that eventually, millions of years down the line, leads to vertebrates, animals with actual backbones, like us. Now, we really need to clear up a major misconception here. Just because the phylum is called Chordata, people naturally assume that all chordates must have a spine. That is absolutely not true. Invertebrate chordates do possess a flexible support rod called a notochord during their development, but they do not have a bony backbone. Vertebrate chordates, the group we belong to, are the ones where that initial flexible notochord gets replaced by a true, hard, bony vertebral column as they grow.
A really perfect example of an invertebrate chordate is the ascidia, a type of marine animal often called a sea squirt. It belongs to a specific subphylum where that all-important defining notochord is actually only present in its larval tail. Once it grows up, it settles down onto the seafloor, completely loses that tail, and ends up looking absolutely nothing like a typical vertebrate. Yet, because of its early developmental stages, it firmly belongs to the chordate family.
So, regardless of whether they actually end up with a spine or not, all chordates share 4 fundamental biological hallmarks at some point in their life cycle. These are the notochord, which provides that flexible support, a dorsal hollow nerve cord, paired pharyngeal gill slits, and a postanal tail. These 4 specific traits represent the essential biological blueprint for the entire phylum. All right, bringing us to section 6, check and recap. We've covered a ton of fantastic evolutionary innovations today. Let's see how much of it stuck with a quick formative check before we summarize the whole shebang. Okay, pop quiz time. Take a moment and think back to the middle of our explainer. Which specific group of animals completely ditched the idea of jointed legs in favor of an internal hydraulic network, a water vascular system, to move around and grab food? If you said the echinoderms, you hit the nail on the head. Animals, like the starfish, rely entirely on this incredible biological hydraulic system to survive on the ocean floor. So just to do a rapid-fire recap, we started by analyzing the heavy-duty biological armor of arthropods, checking out their chitinous exoskeletons and jointed appendages. We saw their massive diversity across 4 subphyla, noting how insects totally dominate the planet and how spiders can literally engineer their own scuba tanks. From there, we examined the radial symmetry and internal water vascular systems of the echinoderms. And finally, we learned the 4 hallmarks of the chordates, identifying the protobackbone notochord that's present even in invertebrate chordates. We've seen today just how wild, diverse, and absolutely brilliant evolutionary biology can be. So I'm going to leave you with one final thought. If arthropods managed to conquer basically every environment on Earth using rigid biological armor, and early chordates thrived using a simple, flexible notochord, what completely bizarre, totally unimagined biological tech might the next great ruling phylum evolve a million years from now. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. See you next time.